High school senior Andy Walsh lives with her unemployed father Jack in a small house in the Chicago suburbs. After his wife left him, Jack never recovered and his life became a mess. He wallows in depression without trying to find work, and most of the family responsibilities fall on Andy's shoulders. She takes care of him, keeps the house in order, and tries to make ends meet by working 2 jobs. Her father, despite his difficult situation, remains an important figure to her. Andy is very attached to him, despite his weaknesses. However, she realizes that her life will be different from other teenagers, especially when it comes to school. There is a feeling inside her that she belongs to a different world, but she can't change that. Andy feels like an outsider in the society of wealthy classmates since her family cannot afford the luxuries that are available to her peers. Her best friend, Philip Ducky Dale, is also an outsider, but he stands out from the rest with his bright personality and eccentric behavior. Ducky often wears unconventional clothes that emphasize his creativity and unconventional view of the world, and despite his openness and friendliness, he does not find support in the school community. He has been in love with Andy for a long time, but he hesitates to confess his feelings to her. He is afraid of ruining their strong friendship and does not want his feelings to jeopardize their relationship, which for him has become the most important thing in his life. His affection for her grows by the day, but he continues to hide it, hoping that she herself will someday realize his feelings. Throughout high school, they are bullied and humiliated by popular students like Benny Hansen and her classmate Steph McKee. Steph is secretly in love with Andy, but she rejects him several times, which is a blow to his ego. This hurt turns into contempt for her, and he begins to behave arrogantly toward her, hiding his resentment behind sarcasm and ridicule. He feels that Andy does not conform to his ideas of normal girls, which makes her the object of his resentment and displeasure. Despite all this, Andy continues to build her relationship with Ducky, and although it is hard for her to be a part of this world, she finds solace in music, which helps her express her feelings and experiences. Music becomes a kind of salvation for her guiding star that inspires her to dream of another reality, a world where she can be accepted, where she will not feel invisible or superfluous. In her dreams, this world looks completely different, and she lives in hope for a better future, where her personality and her passions will be appreciated. Andy works after school at the Trax record store run by her friend Aona. Aona is an eccentric woman in her 30s, with unique taste and a love of vintage fashion. She is not only a mentor to Andy, but also a true friend to rely on. Aona shares Andy's dreams and worries, and one day after work she tells Andy about prom night, which is just around the corner. Andy, of course, doubts whether she should go, since she doesn't have a date and is afraid everyone will make fun of her because of her social status. However, Aona, full of energy and confidence, reassures her that this is an important moment in life that should not be missed. She shares her memories of her own graduation, how she herself felt insecure and afraid of being an outsider among her peers, but in the end it was an unforgettable day and gave her the opportunity to step out of her comfort zone. Aona even offers Andy one of her dresses, which looks amazing, but Andy refuses, deciding to make her own outfit. She wants to create something unique, reflecting her own personality, and with this decision she manages to feel important. Aona supports her decision, admiring how Andy strives to be real without succumbing to pressure and social standards. That night, back home, Andy feels that her life may not be so predictable, and that she has the right to choose her path despite her circumstances. Blaine McDonough, a rich and attractive guy, begins to take notice of Andy. He's one of those guys who doesn't share the snobbish views of his peers and doesn't think social status matters in a relationship. He senses that Andy is different and that attracts him. He sees a sincerity and independence in her that is rare among his acquaintances, and gradually a conversation develops between them. Blaine takes an interest in Andy, and their conversation becomes increasingly warm and casual. Despite all the differences in their social circles, he is not afraid to be open with her, and this in turn gives Andy the reassurance that she is not completely lost in this world of the rich and privileged. After a few meetings and conversations that she doesn't take seriously at first, Blaine decides to ask her out. Andy is at first lost in her feelings, for she fears that his friends will not understand this choice. She fears that they will judge him for having a relationship with a girl who doesn't meet their standards. But despite these doubts, she agrees to the meeting. On the day of the date, she is anxious, hoping that everything will go well. However, when she arrives at Trax to meet him, Blaine is late. She worries, feeling her anxiety growing. At this time, Ducky walks in, who, suffering from the uncertainty of his feelings, decides to finally confess his love to Andy. He feels that he can no longer hide his feelings and, gathering all his courage, asks her out. But Andy doesn't take his proposal seriously, because she already feels her heart is drawn to Blaine, and refuses. This situation escalates the already complicated relationship between them. Ducky, upset by her rejection, feels his soul fill with pain and jealousy. At that moment, he realizes that he has lost her and decides to leave without saying another word. He worries that his friendship with Andy is over and loses all hope for their future. Andy is left alone, contemplating her choice. Her emotions overwhelm her and she can't decide what to do next. Throughout the evening, she keeps replaying the conversation with Ducky in her head, and heavy feelings of guilt begin to plague her. It hurts her because Ducky has always been her close friend and she doesn't want to lose him. However, despite this, her heart belongs to Blaine and she decides that her feelings for him are more important. Andy is tormented by doubts, feeling confused and unsure of the right choice. Blaine brings Andy to Steph's party where she is immediately met with arrogance and disdain from the rich guests. Among them stands out Benny, who openly expresses her dislike for Andy. All this makes her feel alien, and Blaine notices her discomfort. To diffuse the atmosphere, he suggests she leave, and she agrees. Instead of going home, Andy decides to spend time at a nightclub where she invites Blaine. At the club, she is met by Iona, who sits next to Ducky. Things also go awry at this place. Ducky is hostile towards Blaine, believing him to be dishonest and manipulative. He is convinced that Blaine will play with Andy's feelings and soon dump her. Andy and Blaine leave the club, and on the way she reveals to him her terrible secret. She doesn't want him to know where she lives, fearing it will alienate him. However, Blaine reassures her and insists that she let him give her a ride home. He eventually invites her to the prom and kisses her on the cheek, which gives Andy hope for the future. On prom day, Andy wears a pink dress that her father gave her. This dress symbolizes her independence, her choices, and her desire to be herself despite social differences. The evening begins with her feeling insecure and she is even about to leave, but at the last minute she sees Ducky waiting impatiently for her. He takes her hand and they walk to the ballroom. Despite feeling awkward, Andy feels supported and decides to stay. On the dance floor, despite everything, they end up together and everything becomes less important in that moment. Steph, who couldn't hold back his arrogance, begins to taunt Andy and Ducky. At this point, Blaine can't stay away anymore. He takes Steph aside and openly accuses him of being jealous of Andy and arrogant. He states that he will no longer socialize with him and his behavior is unacceptable. Blaine refuses to be part of this elite group and decides to do things his own way. He apologizes to Andy, saying that he has always believed in her and kisses her on the cheek before leaving the event. Ducky, watching this, admits he was wrong and advises Andy to go after Blaine. He jokes that he'll never take her to prom again if she doesn't. Andy smiles at him and asks him to dance. In that moment, she realizes that her past fears and worries no longer play such an important role in her life. She decides to catch up with Blaine, and as she walks out into the parking lot, they meet again. Andy and Blaine kiss under the stars, reaffirming their feelings for each other. This moment symbolizes for Andy the beginning of a new life where she can be herself and not be afraid of who is around her.